Like the advice about sleep pattern, how important it is to go to bed or get into bed before you're exhausted. It's one of the most important things for projectors to understand about staying healthy energy-wise. Stop doing things before you're exhausted. I mean, that's something that's essential knowledge for any projector. You know, there has to be a place inside of you where the moment you realize that you're tiring out, stop. You know, and the fact is that for the classic and mental projector, you know, stop before you even get to the point where you think that you might be exhausted. You know, this is one of those things where you really have to see that you can't afford, you know, to be caught consistently in the generating, manifesting process, and you have to begin to recognize within yourself without guilt. Remember, you've all been conditioned. You know, you've been conditioned that you stay with it, that you don't stop, that you keep on putting your energy. Remember, you go beyond the generators. Nah, that's not for you. It's about staying healthy. And you stay healthy by not exhausting yourself, and that's very, very important. When we look at energy projectors, they're about 80% of all projectors. In other words, they're a huge slice of what projectors are. And 50% of that, that is 50 out of the 80, they're emotional. They're emotional energy projectors. There's nothing quite like the emotional system. You know, the emotional system is literally what colors the world. And it colors the world with a wave of hope and pain. Every single human being that has a defined emotional system goes through a process in their life where they continually go up and down in terms of the way in which they look at the world, the way they feel the world, and the way in which they respond to life. This wave is a wave that is a wave from hope to pain, and it comes back again. All emotional beings know that when they're going down, they think it'll never end, but they always seem to come back up. And when they're going up, they hope it'll stay, and it doesn't. They always end up going back down. And it doesn't matter, you know, what guru you have or homeopath, you're not going to get rid of that. Nothing is going to get rid of that except death, and then you don't care, so it doesn't matter. You're going to be emotional all your life. And the whole thing about the nature of the emotional system is that not only is it deeply powerful in the way it affects emotional beings, but the way it affects half of the world that isn't emotional. Because half of the world that isn't emotional is always rising and falling on an amplified wave. Now, if you're an emotional being, one of the things you have to recognize, and again it comes back to this term of authority. Whenever you look at a human design chart and you see a defined, a colored-in emotional system, the solar plex center, the moment you see that colored in, it becomes the authority in decision-making. And that authority is no truth in the now. No truth in the now. In many ways, like the mental projector who cannot answer in the now and has to go through a technique in that sense of finding out what really will work for them, when you're dealing with an emotional projector, their frequency is time and only time. Time. No emotional being can afford to make a decision in the moment. It's always going to be wrong. And it's going to cost you, and it's going to cost somebody else, because it's the way it works. And one of the things to recognize if you're an emotional being is that as an emotional being, you have a special awareness frequency. And this frequency is called clarity, becoming clear. And becoming clear in the sense that you sort of get through the fog of the emotional system and begin to see what something actually is. And only time does that. Only time. Think about it this way. That wave of the emotional system, imagine what's really happening. Imagine that somebody meets me today and that they're at the top end of their wave. You know, at the top end of their wave, everything feels good, even me. And so they'll assume that I'm really nice and, you know, this is terrific and wonderful and blah, blah, blah. You know, and the next day, I don't have to be there anymore. The next day, they start moving in their wave, and the wave starts going down, and they start finding things they don't like. And by the time they get to the bottom of the wave, they've really found stuff they don't like. Now look, If they have to make a decision about me when they're at the top of their wave, they're not necessarily making the right decision. It's being colored by their emotional position. If they make a decision at the bottom of the wave, that doesn't mean that it's the right decision. It's being colored by the emotional position. And this is the whole thing about being an emotional person. If you don't try to make decisions in the moment, you'll see it gets easier and easier and easier to make them. Time gives you clarity. I want you, Harry. I need you, Harry. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Right now, I don't think that's such a good idea because right now I'm down in my wave and you right now are the worst possible thing talking to me. But I'm not going to say no, Harry. I'll wait till next week. Because you're going to get to a point in your wave where you get to the other side. And if you get to the other side and it's suddenly, Harry, you're the answer, then you're going to have to weigh things and see, well, how much of a good thing is it compared to how much it isn't, and it's all a feeling system. And if you get to the best end of your wave and you still think Harry's a jerk, you know that Harry's out. But then you're going to be able to make a clear emotional decision. The dilemma is the waiting, the time. It's always the dilemma. Emotional people, for 15 years now, I've been telling emotional people about waiting. I've been telling them about the wave, and I watch and I see their eyes looking at me as if to say, if Harry is the perfect thing for me, and I'm up on my wave, and Harry's perfect, and I feel terrific, there's no way I'm going to tell Harry to call me next week. Because that's the average emotional being. The emotional system is very powerful. And this whole business of saying, no, I have to wait, I have to think about it, there's this fear that Harry isn't going to come back. Please understand, Harry will come back. Emotional systems are sexy. Harry will come back. He just will. He'll come back, hoping for the high end of the wave. But Harry will come back, and you have a chance to go through your process to be clear. To be clear. And if you don't get to a point of clarity, then you have no answer. You have no answer. And you have to have the courage to live with that, because that's part of decision making. Sometimes you cannot know as an emotional being. It's okay. It's not about forcing yourself to make a decision. To be an emotional projector on the surface can seem to be very, very, very frustrating business. Not only are you waiting for the invitation, but when the invitation finally comes, you go, no, call me next week. It's like, this is the gods creating masochism. I don't know. Anyway, it seems like that. It's not. It's not. It's all about the way human beings are conditioned. Human beings are conditioned by unemotional people who say, make the decision in the moment. And if you can't make a decision in the moment, you don't know, and therefore you're not reliable, and you're not trustworthy, and this and that, and blah, 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 and what's wrong with you? Why can't you make up your mind? And all of that stuff. They don't want to live with that. Emotional people don't want to live with that. And so they get conditioned to being a mess. I mean, really. Not just them, but the wave they put out into everybody else. And this is the most important thing for an emotional being to understand, for all projectors to understand. Because you're not here to be told what to do, because you're not here to be controlled, you're here to get the best possible terms. You're here to get the best possible deal for you. And all you have to do is insist on it.